Right, good morning to all rider viewers. Welcome to the Wednesday Bike Club. So, what are we talking about today? Well, we're in a bit slightly reflective mood today. So, there's a lot of subjects I could have covered, but this one sort of kept coming up in my head. And it's really about why we started riding and why I started riding. And are those reasons still the same why I still ride now? And, what do I get out of biking compared to what I did then? And I'll be interested to hear your stories as well. Because what I like about the Wednesday Bike Club, I know obviously I do my best to comment back to you, but you chat amongst yourselves, and I think that's really good. And I think it's nice that people they read the comments, and it makes them think about other things as well, and then you comment amongst each other, and that's what it's all about really. This Wednesday Bike Club is sort of like a community meet-up place, a community hub. Right, let's find somewhere to park up and we'll have a chat. I'm on the Kawasaki today. I thought I'll get this out, even though it's spluttering and doing all sorts of funny things. It's just good fun to get out. Just to remind myself, because I'm about to start the work on it. I'm going to get the tyres done first and then get some other bits done. So, right, let's go find somewhere to park and have a chat. Right, so here we are. So I stopped at the little green at Wisborough Green, the green at Wisborough Green, and grabbed a coffee from the Mill Cafe just over there. It's changed hands, so I said I'd give them a mention. I have done a video from there a long time ago, but it's changed hands and they're doing more sort of breakfasty stuff and big breakfast and all homemade cakes. So we're riding off on his 125. But yeah, check them out. So the Mill Cafe, and I said to them they need to put a sign outside saying biker specials because they're very looking for the biker traffic. So today's episode then. So it was really to sort of talk about why I got into biking in the first place, and the reasons that I started riding motorbikes the same as they are now, why I continue to ride, or is that completely changed and my attitude to it is completely different. And it'd be interesting to know in the comments whether you're the same as me. So I started riding, as most people did, on mopeds. But what I find funny is you think the mopeds that we had in my day, in the very early 80s, were some of the coolest mopeds and some of the most sought after mopeds on the market now, aren't they? My Fizzy, as you can see here. And we all had, there was me, Mike, John, Spotty and all the rest of it. We all had Fizzies, AP50s. Okay, Mike had the Fizzum, which was the chopper version of the Fizzy. Sorry, Mike, I had to mention that again. This is quite a cool bike now. I don't know if anybody saw them. If it was the FS1EM. I don't know what the M stood for, but it was quite a weird bike. But I remember it being really smooth compared to the original Fizzy. But it was a chopper type bike. But we had all these bikes. There was the AP, the Fizzies, the Fizzum. There was the SS50. That was the 4-stroke one, which was an interesting bike. It was slow, but you could tell it was much better built than all the others. But we rode around like in a little posse, as we did, and we were having the time of our lives on those bikes. And the other thing I always remember was the fact that we could all work on them bikes. We were forever, knackering pistons and things, and we'd take the heads off and new pistons, taking the circlips out, the gudgeon pins. We learned all about those things then with a few rudimentary tools, and it's one of those things we don't tend to do now, is it? You don't see, I suppose maybe because I just don't see youngsters doing that, but those cool mopeds just don't exist, do they? I don't think anymore. Mine was the FS1E DXA. Mine was the posh one. So mine had it was a disc brake with the auto lube system. But the fundamentals of that, what did that give me? What was I getting out of having that motorbike or moped? Mine didn't have the pedals. It had pegs, So I think you took it out of the moped. I think the moped, because you called it moped because it had pedals. And the early Fizzies had pedals, didn't they? But the later Fizzies had pegs. I can't remember what the difference in the law on that was. I can't really remember. But I always thought, what did that actually give me as a youngster growing up? And it was my granddad, that summed it up. He was such a great guy, very wise man. He said, "It's your independence. You've got independence." And that was it, wasn't it? I wasn't attached to anybody at that point. As youngsters, whenever we went out anywhere, we had to, get in the back of my dad's car. It was a Ford Escort or a Capri, which was quite cool anyway. But at that point, the minute I got on that bike and I pulled away, that elastic snapped and I was free. And I was then in charge of my destiny and my destination. I could go wherever I wanted. There was no one to stop me going anywhere. And if I just wanted to go down that little road that I had no idea where it led to, we didn't have sat-nav in them days, did we? It didn't matter. They were my choices. And I think that was the amazing thing, wasn't it, about those days, that mopeds and things like that were quite accessible. And it was also a rite of passage, because you automatically went from mopeds, motorbikes to cars in those days. And that's what we all did. I grew up in the era where we had fast Fords. It was Escorts, RS Escorts, Mexicos. I had a Mark 1 Mexico. We wish I had that now. Capris. And so my friends, Mark 1 RS 2000s. There is a name in it. And Mark 1 RS 2000. Cars like that were floating around then. And they were affordable. You could afford to buy those. I had a Mark 1 GT Escort and Mark 1 Mexico. I don't know whether that's still going around, so I might tell you. The registration was TAR 700J. I don't know if she's still around. But that was a fantastic car. I had a lot of problems, but it was a great car. But it gave you that being in charge of your own destiny and destination was such a great thing, that you could go anywhere, do whatever you wanted, and it was like a coming of age, wasn't it? You became an adult at that point, because no one could tell you, no one was had to say you got to come with us. Not that my parents were there, but no, you can't stay at home. You're gonna have to come with us. I could get on the bike and I could just go, and boy, did I put some miles on that thing. Now, yes, it's fair to say that I also had my major crash on there and spent 3 months in hospital. But it's that thing. It was all part of the experience. So there was always one of us falling off or having an accident at that point. But we were all quite careful. I also remember those days that the distances that we would travel, we would think that, that our biggest trip was to go to Chelsea Bridge. And we would ride the bikes from Crawley and we would go to Chelsea Bridge. And that was a huge distance from memory, particularly on a 50, and we would be there, helmets on our tanks, behind the bars, trying to go as fast as we could. I can remember my Fizzy being clocked at 59. I mean, that 59, that bike probably would keep up with my classic 350 at the moment. Although mine did have a 60 bore cut on it. I don't know if anybody watched the video I did where I said that I bought from the local dealer Barry Sheen's 60 bore kit. I don't know why Barry Sheen would have had a 60 bore kit, but that's what I was told. You come home, it came in a box, and we put it in. That was Brian Leask's. I don't know if people remember that. The other thing that I remember very clearly about that time, there was quite a lot of little dealers bike dealers in Crawley at the time. So we had P&H, which was a very small bike shop then. We had Harold Lyons, which was the Honda dealer. Again, that was on like 2 floors. It was in it wasn't in the Martlets, it was somewhere in Crawley, but it was in town. And then you had, Brian Leask's, Harold Lyons, P&H. You had Northeast, which I think Northeast is still there in Hawley. The other one we had though was Mixed Motorcycles, which is in Salford near Hawley. Now the only thing I can remember about Mixed Motorcycles was I remember there being a big glass front to this shop, and it wasn't a big shop. I can't remember going inside it, but I can remember this big glass front, and in the window were piled up loads of spare exhausts, old exhausts. And we would go there to get the exhausts for the fizzies, because they would sell, you could buy the early fizzy exhaust, which from memory was unrestricted, something like that, and it gave you like another 1.5 horsepower. I don't know how we knew it was 1.5 horsepower, but you would bolt yours off, put that one on, and off you went. And you know, there must have been no money, because we weren't, if we were working, we were only on like a YTS or something. So we'd ride down there, get exhaust, you know, stick it up, put it on the seat and sit on it and ride it back and change the exhaust. But we did all that. We did all that maintenance on our bikes, and that's held me in good stead understanding motorcycles in those days. But it was that initial, for me, it's that initial freedom of the motorbike. I think as you go through your biking career, you know, I went into cars and that sort of stuff, but coming back into biking in a big way, to me always felt like unfinished business, is that I'd ridden bikes odd periods through that, but not to any sort of great extent. And a lot of that was to do with being kind to my mum, that she would now worry that I was going to have a terrible accident. And I always had a fear on the road, as well on the motorbike, that, you know, because of the accident I had, that I found riding on the road on a bike even more dangerous. Even though there was always a certain amount of fear when you got on a bike anyway, that was part of the excitement, wasn't it? The slight fear of it. But of course, bring us through now, years later, and you look at the roads now, which are far more dangerous than they were then, far more dangerous. You know, it's not only other road users, it's the state of the roads and all the rest of it. But what do I get out of biking now? Well, there is certainly that extraordinary sense of freedom that I have riding a bike. When I get on a bike, again, I have that thing that no one can stop me. I can go wherever I like. I've got that small size, that small area that I'm, you know, moving in, which is all mine. It just belongs to me. And you think, you know, that's incredibly liberating, isn't it? Amazingly liberating. And then when you think, in today's society, we have motorbikes which are really reliable and, you know, relatively in terms cheap to run, that they could take us anywhere. We can go anywhere on it. And I think that's what I get from it now. I don't feel like a little hair of scarum whizzing around on my moped. There's that, it's going to sound funny, it's that cowboy mentality, isn't it? That sort of thing that you saddle up, you know, you put your bags on the back, and you know, you kick your heels or you flick your reins, and off you go. And I really get that sense with motorbikes now, is that it's that adventure mentality, that cowboy mentality. You know, although we think it's a bit, maybe I think it's a bit like this, you know, I show, you know, the Clint Eastwood thing, but in reality it's probably a little bit more like this, isn't it? And that's the same thing with the motorbikes, isn't it? We think you know, I always think I look like this, you know, but the actual reality of it is nothing like Steve McQueen, is it? It's more like this, isn't it? As we know. But I get such a great sense of freedom, and that again, that in charge of your own destiny, which I don't think you quite get with a car. There's something more primal on a motorbike. I suppose it's the air around you, is it, and the sounds and the smells of everything. You can smell everything. Do you remember when I was in France the other week? I said I could smell the earth, and when that hits your lungs, it's like, oof, it like gives you an enormous boost. So I suppose it means that this thing of, you know, we as a human race, we still want to, you know, see what's in the next valley, don't we? And I think that's where this sort of sense of freedom that the motorbike gives us, it gives us that opportunity to go into that valley, doesn't it? Under our own terms, under our own steam, I suppose. But I think you can't you can't remove that from the human race, can you? I know a lot of people live a very sedentary life, but I think there's a certain wave of people that just want to get into the next valley. They just want to see what's over the hill, and I think that's what drives us. And it certainly drives me. You know, there's that hunger to explore, and I think the motorbike does it. And it doesn't matter what you ride either. It doesn't have to be a GS. It could be an old Kawasaki, or the little 350 Meteor, which works as a great little horse, doesn't it? That's my horse when I ride that. You know, that's what I saddle up and, you know, give a little bit of hay at night and some water. I said to Peter when I was in France the other week, when I met with Peter and Chris, I said, you know, I always feel like when I'm riding the Meteor that I should, you know, wrap the reins around a post and give it some water. But that's what it's like, isn't it, on motorbikes? That's how I am now with motorbikes. There's that extraordinary sense of wonder and excitement to get on a bike for the first time and start it up and, you know, engage the gears and all the rest of it. But for me now, it's the pure exploration and just enjoying that side of motorcycling. You know, not so much the mechanics of it, although I still think to have mechanical sympathy with your bike or your horse is really important. I think that improves the ride for you, you know, because you become part of that. There's two of you together in that experience, isn't there? You know, as it is with your horse. And not that I ride horses. I've ridden horses, but a couple of times. But it's that same feeling, isn't it? I think. So, yeah, the way I ride has changed, but what I get from it still, regardless of anything else, is that freedom and being in charge of my own destiny and destination. So go on, put in the comments, you know, your experience and how you feel about your bikes now. Is it the same as when you started riding to what it is today? And I'm sure you'll all talk amongst yourselves as you do when we do that. But there we are, that's Wednesday's Bike Club chat. And I'm off to get out of the way because I think it's going to pour with rain in a minute. So look after yourself, ride safe, and enjoy your next destination. See you later.